Yes, it's getting later and later towards the day, but I'm very happy to be here on stage on a topic that, for me, is actually one of the most important topics in Web3, because I also feel it's one of the stigmas that Web3 still has, that it's like insecure, it's a place where you easily lose your funds, where people hack you every day, and I think here it's really important, how do we handle this, how do we move forward with this? Also just looking at the current state of the ecosystem, like just in the last week, there were more than $20 million funds lost in some hack again. And even if we zoom in more on the account abstraction space or smart account space, there have been some significant, let's say, errors in the past that really shook also the trust in the smart account ecosystem and how can you trust the smart account, right? And this is really the point for me why I really want to have this panel and enjoy a little bit the discussion with the three of you. And I would actually give it up to you to introduce yourself shortly. I would start with Matt, and then we can go around.
Thanks, Richard. Yeah, hi guys, my name is Matt. I go by the handle Lightclient on the internet, and I'm one of the authors of 3074 and a contributor to the Go Ethereum team.
I'm Oliver, I'm the founder of Hats, and we bring security on-chain with, right now, 2 use cases, bug bounties and audit competition. And we believe that making security verifiable on-chain is now becoming more needed with account abstraction.
So, hi, thank you for the invitation. My name is Josef. I am a co-founder of Ackee. We are smart contract auditors. And we are really happy we can be here in the safe ecosystem. And also we are producing some open source for everyone to use. And this is what we do. Thank you.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I'm, again, happy to have you on stage. I work in different forms with all of you together, be it discussions, be it on like running our bug bounty or doing audits. It's very nice to have you here. And I think for all of us, like security is like this day-to-day business, right? Like when we think about an EIP, what is the security implications? How do we do audits? How do we bring the information on chain? For the users, this doesn't feel always this case. It's more like, hey, we want to have the nice UX, and the only point when security seems important is when it fails. Like, so if it breaks, then suddenly everybody is like, oh, where was the security? And a lot of recent discussions when it comes to modular smart accounts, actually the security point was very important when it comes from the developers, right? Like they always talk about how can we protect the users? How can we protect the people that use our standards? So why is it that for account abstraction, this seems to be especially important that we have the security? Like I would give it here to Joseph.
Yeah, so of course it's maybe important to sometimes remind the very basics of course, like when we are shifting from external addresses to smart accounts, we have to trust the smart contract, and smart contracts are developed by people, and people make mistakes. And of course the job of everyone here is to ensure that there are no mistakes. And basically like security, at least in my point of view, is a lot of about following good practices, which are here since the 90s. So we can see it on the repositories we are auditing when the team is doing correctly, peer reviews, have a test coverage, then it's actually like a good software. So then the audit, which is what we do, is just like the top of the iceberg, but the really underlying layers which are important are in the overall process. And I'm happy that so far with the projects we have seen here in the Safe ecosystem, such as Brahma or Rhinestone or Safe itself, the quality of the software is very high. So I would like this to stay.
That's very interesting to hear. And maybe one question to ask, and maybe also for the others to understand. So why is it for smart accounts, which are like building on top of the blockchain, different than for an EOA that is part of the protocol, right? Like theoretically, we could be in a state that an EOA is broken too, right? Like that there's a, where, like, do we do audits for the consensus protocol too, or is it just for smart accounts?
Well, another angle how to look at it is like that things that are battle tested with some usage and with some users and already some liquidity are the ones that we can trust. So we can look at it also like this way. And here again, the implementations of smart accounts such as Safe that are here for a while seems to be the one that are trusted.
Okay. So Oliver, Heads is working on having this on chain, right? Like, and where we say, okay, we want to have this. It's also working to make it more accessible, the security, right? And we see that building up this trust, right? Like building up. There are different tools for it. At Safe, we set up a honeypot at one point where we say, let's showcase that Safe is secure. Let's put $500,000 in there and hope that people either hack it so that we find the bug or there's no bug, which was the case so far. But it's also like if we want to apply high security standards such as formal verification, how do we get there? How can Heads help scale this? How can blockchain, what do we need to change to really get to that everybody has a higher security standards?
So yeah, I think it's very, very hard for the user to understand how secure is something that he uses. And I think by now I came to the very pessimistic worldview that actually the user will probably never care about security, and it's more on us developers to make sure that we will present something like the secure. That as well means that the user usually will look to some kind of organization or person and say, I trust this guy's opinion. And we have that right now with Safe, right? Like Safe is super battle tested, it has a great brand, and everyone is very, very confident that I use Safe, that I will not lose my money. But now with account abstraction, we're coming to a world where your wallet is suddenly a combination of different smart contracts that interact. And then we have to think about, like, okay, which of these smart contracts are we maybe standardizing, or for each wallet there's only one option, and then we can make that like very hardened, right? We can formally verify that, but for some others we maybe want to open it up to the community so everyone can develop and innovate, and I can plug in third party. But then if something breaks, people will look to the wallet provider and point the finger and say, like, I used this module in Safe, my Safe got hacked. And so here the question is, like, how can we make sure that we have a quite open system where everyone can develop, but still make sure that the user is safe, and this as well the wallet providers can safeguard their brand from any like damages if something fails. And we believe that if there is some kind of way to query, does this module have an audit? Does this module have a bug bounty? Does the code match the code that has been audited? Could be really, really helpful. And since we are running our audit competitions on chain, you can verify this information like without even like trusting some kind of third party.
How easy is it to align with all the involved parties on what is that what you put on chain? Like, I know we started this in the past, but it's like saying, okay, what, just a simple fact, is this a critical, a major, a minor? What level is the bug? How hard is it to align on this?
Yeah, so this is obviously super hard because there's as well different methods, and I believe in the end it will for always be a contested topic. Like, we personally are in the camp that says if it's able to be exploited and remove funds from a contract, it's always something critical, because in blockchain, if everything is out in the open, and it doesn't matter if it has to be full moon and you have to sacrifice a goat in order to exploit the vulnerability, after some time someone will find a way to exploit it. But yeah, it's very hard to come together in the security community because it's not very objective, these kind of discussion. It comes down to interpretation. But maybe we don't have to do these discussions now, but we can already find like a very standardized, simplified starting point just to like reach the common goal that we all share.
Actually,
if I may add to this, I think like it's very important to have the rules of the game set before the contest or audit, and I think it's kind of fine that every company has a little bit different, but it must be like written before actually like looking at the code how we will evaluate the issues, so then there is no misunderstanding at the end of the audit if the issue is critical or high. So just have some kind of like methodology described before the audit starts, and then I think it's much easier and more convenient for both parties.
I think this is like quite known, and I think no one would disagree with you. And we even host our competition rules on IFPS, so there's actually proof that it was not tampered with. But I think the problem then becomes if we want to have like data that is on-chain that we can query, how secure is the smart contract, then multiple parties have to decide on one common definition. And I think this is then where the problem will come for. For example, I'm not sure like if Ackee and Heads could like agree on one definition on what a high vulnerability would be.
Yeah, I know that sometimes some issues that we report, for example, as medium, the others raise as high, you know, and of course it's very hard to set like common levels.
Yeah. I think agreement when it involves multiple parties is always a challenge. I think also how then these discussions evolve sometimes is very interesting, and I mean, I think Matt had to experience this in the last couple of weeks quite a lot. And even so for me personally, the last couple of weeks when it comes to modular accounts, it was super interesting, especially this year, 75, 79, so the minimal modular smart account standard was pushed, Alchemy pushed their modular smart account standard with 6900, and also the discussions around 3074, which then evolved to 7702, which basically bridge the gap between EOAs and smart accounts were super interesting, but there were some discussions that were, if I want to put it nicely, let's say they were wild inside the Telegram. And it's like where it came around the topics also, right? Like this is a super powerful standard and people very much embrace that it is powerful, but at the same time they were scared that it's so powerful that the only way to really utilizes are very centralized means, similar how Oliver said, like there's a brand, there needs to be brand at risk, basically, and that say MetaMask has to maintain their whitelist, right? Like, and it was taken to this extreme that this is the only way. And I think you proposed it as a potential initial step how to utilize invokers. Do you think this initial step will persist forever, or can we get away from this? We only need, like the only way to ensure security for invokers, or let's say the code that we signed with 7702 are whitelists.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think this has just been a journey that we've been on for a very long time. When we started with 3074 3 or 4 years ago, we were not really familiar with a lot of the terminology that's come about now with modular accounts and smart contract wallets. And we started using this terminology, like talking about whitelists. One's wallet might whitelist a list of invokers that account is able to interact with. And over time, I think I've realized that this was not a very good framing for conveying the types of things that are happening. And the thing that we were grasping at is that what 3074 allowed and what 7702 is going to allow are fundamentally different than what's possible in the smart contract wallet world. And what I mean by fundamentally different is that today when you deploy code to an account on Ethereum or pretty much any blockchain, that code is what is going to live into that account. And we are able to build really nice frameworks around this concept with having a proxy contract pointing to a smart contract wallet implementation, having that smart contract wallet implementation point to potential different modules via delegate call and have a very nice pipeline there. But what 3074 would allow is to what 3074 and 7702 allowed is for you to have different code actually executing in the context of your account. And when you think about that, you start thinking like, okay, we're basically allowing modules with root access to your account. And this is something that's very different for how we think about modules in the smart account context. Modules in the smart account context are much more about the smart account is giving specific capabilities to these modules. And maybe some modules have root access to your account. But it's very clear in those situations that this module is going to be able to spend all of your assets, send all of your NFTs, etc. So for 3074, for 7702, these questions about whitelists, like it's the same problem that we have with smart accounts. If you're going to let code run that has complete control over your account, like Oliver said, the users can't care about the security. They won't care about it. They are not tooled to understand what's happening in their account. Really the only solution there is to have some sort of list managed by the brand of your wallet, protecting the users.
Do you have an assumption why people seem to care so much when it comes to 3074 and 7702 to when, as you pointed out, right, like Safe in itself doesn't have a whitelist, but potentially, it's also not that black and white, right? actually, when you look at our interface, we do not allow general delegate calls, right? Like, it is our multi-sig contract. If you do any other delegate call, you get big-ass warnings, which, due to security, people accept this. And I think this, you have a lot of other examples. But for this case, they seem very emotional about it, let's say it this way. Why the difference?
I think it's really just this is a new paradigm of being able to execute code within the context of one's account. And it's very difficult to convey the nuance about what is going to be possible under this mechanism. And this is part of the reason that 7702 is gaining a lot of steam. I think that it's helping limit it, like what the different path of execution is. Like 3074, the invoker pattern is very different from how smart contracts work. And 7702 is hopefully going to push us down this path of how smart contracts work more. But at the end of the day, I think the whitelisting terminology was a very inflammatory term that people hear this and they think I need to fight the centralization around whitelisting. Like this is a protocol that should be permissive. We should be able to do whatever we want. It's my keys. I should be in control. And we also have to think who is having these conversations. These are the most technical people in the entire industry, the people who understand wallets better than anyone, and they hear that a wallet might restrict what they can do and that this becomes inflammatory to them. But we also have to think about the other 99% of users who have no ability to audit or understand the flow that's happening with their wallet, and we need to design mechanisms that protect them. And that's kind of where the whitelist comes from. And like you said, like Gnosis is, if you think like, oh, this one whitelist where you say this is the implementation of the safe that our users use and our interface uses, we're not going to let you run some untrusted wallet in your context. If you want to do that, you can use some module or like completely migrate your account, but there's not a way for the Gnosis interface to support like many different contracts behind it.
I think one reason why whitelists are so debated in the developer community is because it becomes very political very fast. Like, let's say Safe would host the whitelist. Tomorrow, a lot of people would start pinging you, like, hey, please add my invoker to the whitelist, right? Like, I'm a good one. And then, like you maybe as well be even in a situation that you don't want to be, where you are like the kingmaker. And as well, I think it would then maybe come into a situation where it's like, okay, who do I know at Uniswap so I can get into their whitelist? Who do I know at Consensus? And if I'm then maybe a new team and I don't have any connections, I mean, yes, it's a kind of security feature that someone needs connection, needs a track record to maybe host critical infrastructure. But then at the same time, it's like not really permissionless innovation anymore. So I think that the trade-off is just very difficult to do well. But I'm as well here on Matt's side that in the end, I value the security of the users a little bit higher. Yeah, so I think we have tried it for so long, and we have burned so many people that maybe left the industry for good, that we have to prioritize security maybe a little bit higher than we used to.
I think wallets are in a very special position to control a lot about how users interact with the chain, and it's really important that we have this social agreement as a community that wallets are going to be permissive when it's allowed. And I think that's why, if you look at like how do wallets work today, Safe lets you do pretty much anything that you want to do. MetaMask lets you do pretty much anything that you want to do. And we should like continue having this social contract with wallets so that they don't take advantage of this position that they're in. And that's why I think that with 3074 or 7702, that there wouldn't be this kind of king-making special hierarchy around invokers or whitelisting or whatever. Like it's on us as a community to protect those values, and if MetaMask tomorrow decides that they're only going to let people use MetaMask swaps or ban a certain exchange, then I think that there would be an outcry and people would leave the wallet. So this is like our tool to fight back against the centralized power of wallets that inherently exist even today.
One of the other ways that people love to fight this centralized power is like put stuff on chain. Right? Like it's this general. I mean, I can remember I think it was a couple of years ago, I also talked with a Bitcoin maxi, and he was like also decentralize everything, decentralize the police, decentralize like everything, right? Like it's the same, you can put everything on chain. And actually also in this regard, right, like what do you allow, what you don't allow, these whitelists, you could say one way to put it would just put everything on chain, right? Like whatever. Is the question, does it solve anything? I mean, Oliver, you with heads, right? Like you say, let's put as much as possible on chain. While like from Ackee, right? Like obviously you primarily do your stuff off chain and gives us where's the balance?
Do you want to take it?
Yeah, just a quick comment. So from our side, it's very important, for example, having the results of a security review on chain. So at least like the outcome there, and that's why we were happy to join the draft of ERC on chain audits, because then it's clear what's happening in the audit, and from our side, it kind of like protects the users and protects also the auditing companies as a brand, because sometimes the protocols tend to, for example, like order an audit for a high respectable company, and then they are doing like next releases, but they keep the logo of the initial company on the website, even if the company is not auditing them anymore, and that's kind of like misbehavior towards the users. So if this information would be put on chain, bounded with the commit or anything, that would kind of like clear the air. So that's like our expectation from on chain.
So I'm definitely not in the camp to put everything on chain, but I think for some things it's really helpful to automate. And for security reports and for like maybe like a trust score, it can be super helpful to automate, for example, certain listing processes, or it could allow composable contracts to build on each other even if they are upgradable. So I think right now there's a lot of risk that if I build like a contract on top of another contract, and this is not immutable, that if they would update the contract and there's suddenly a vulnerability, then my users are at risk as well. But if that contract has maybe an audit report with the hash of the code, and I can query that, and then suddenly the hashes don't matching anymore, I would directly cut the connection to that smart contract, and I would wait to enable this again until the audit is like updated, and I'm sure that at least it has some kind of level of security. And this kind of automation is only possible if you put this information on chain. So I think there's a lot of value, and then as well you can verify if the information as well has been published by the real kind of key holder and not some kind of imposter or maybe the team even, and we have seen that many times. One case is they have done an audit for an old contract and still claim the new have audited, but we even saw some auditors had to make public announcements. No, we never worked with this team. This team claims on their website that we have audited them, but this is not true. And I think having the data on chain could mitigate some of these problems.
Yes, very, very interesting to hear. We talked a lot about this smart accounts and account abstraction, and I mean, account abstraction was this day one wish from basically from Ethereum and also from Vitalik, right? Like, and I heard at some point it was like the only reason why it was not part of Ethereum from the get-go was because we had to meet a deadline and we had to start Ethereum, and that's why it was not possible. Hearsay a little bit, but I feel like security is important and we're pushing it forward, but often a lot of this innovation that we would push forward to, it feels like it gets stuck in these security discussions because there are so many different opinions. What is the right level of security, where to go to? Do you feel that, like Matt, for you, because you're more involved in this EIP process, I feel like you have a good touch point there. Are all core devs too strict on security?
I wouldn't say they're too strict on security as a core dev, I suppose. But I mean, I guess that's for the community to say, like, would you rather Ethereum be a place that's moving more quickly, potentially breaking things, or would you rather Ethereum be this slower process that's slowly upgrading and doing things in an extremely safe way? And for me, I think the way the process works is okay. It's not perfect, but it's also feeling like it's about as good as we can do given the constraints. And part of the first part of your question is like, why is there no accounts abstraction still in Ethereum to this day, 8, 9, 10 years later? And I think the first 8 years of Ethereum, we were putting out fires, and we were trying to make good on the probably bigger parts of the vision of Ethereum, which was shipping proof of stake and making sure that the execution chain was alive for that whole period of time. And we've sort of done all of those things now, and that's not to say that there's nothing on fire still on the chain. Like, I think that we are crying for more data bandwidth on the chain, and that's something that is probably the #1 priority amongst core devs. It's like now we're moving into a place where it's like time to start working on the nice things to have, and I think it's very possible that account abstraction becomes the highest priority or a high priority thing for the core developers over the next 3, 4, 5 years. It's just a question of like who is going to be that interface between the community that's here, the safe community, the 437 communities, who's going to interface with the core devs and like work with us and work through the process of getting that those proposals into the core of the clients and the core of the protocol.
Yeah. In traditional companies, this is often where you then say, okay, the CEO has to do something. And I recently saw on Twitter that Derek from Zero Dev proposed, let's make Vitalik our CEO, and he should really take this role and we should listen to him. Do you think this, or I would extend this to all of you, do you think this is the way to go to say, okay, to speed this up, to decide in a decentralized network, let's announce somebody as CEO?
I think unfortunately the network has grown and it's not really possible anymore to put it back into the bottle and control it in that way. I think Vitalik rightfully has a lot of influence about where the roadmap goes and what the protocol is doing, but I think it's based upon his ideas are extremely good in general. He doesn't have a lot of ideas that end up being complete dead ends or bad paths to go down. So the fact that he's still saying like account abstraction is absolutely something that needs to go into the protocol, this is a huge positive force in getting core developers to do it. It's just really a matter of prioritization now. Like where does this fit into the priorities of the next 5 years? Is Verkle the next big thing that core devs should work on? Is working on inclusion lists the next big thing? Like these are all sort of like mutually exclusive in some ways, and it's a matter of like figuring out what the right priority order of that is.
So I personally really enjoy about Ethereum that I'm very, very confident that it will be there in 10 years, which I'm like not very confident with like most other chains. And so I as well think that it's moving slow is sometimes a good thing, because we have a very, very high responsibility that we are not gonna like burn our whole community. And I think Ethereum has the size that if something major would happen, we could probably set back the whole industry for like 5 years. And so I think the best ideas should win. And I think the best ideas are coming from Vitalik, just because he's like really, really good at what he does. But I think that the more like informal leadership and battle of ideas works really well. And for security, I'm a fan of like intense discussions. I hope at some point that we as a community can step the foot down and say like, okay, this is the direction now we're gonna run together. So maybe the call to action would be more to the community, like, hey, at some point leave it be. Yeah, like it doesn't need to be perfect. So don't be a naysayer, and let's try to get a direction together and move. But we don't need a central figure for that. We can, I think, as well make it in another means.
Cool. I think we are running slowly out of time, right? I'm not sure. We have 5 minutes. Then I can ask another question, right? Like, I mean, we do want to guarantee the highest level of security. We have this very high processes, and I think Ackee also has a lot of experience on security audits, as far as I know, beyond even blockchain, right? Like, is there anything where we say these processes is on the consensus level where we can say Ackee can, or like we should improve more automation? That being said, I think there's already a lot of automation happening in the core devs, but to what level do we say this can be further improved?
Yeah, so automation is necessary because like for the older guys such as me who has been here in the space in the last bull run, we remember that in 21 there was like waiting time for an audit almost 6 months with the like let's say respectable companies, and the bull run already started. So I'm afraid we are getting there as well, because the work of security engineers just cannot be easily scaled. On the other side, there is not like one solution to solve the audits by AI or something like that, or at least I don't believe that. So it's about like automating every possible step that can be automated. And here, for example, with AI, like my secret advice to anyone is like let AI write your test cases, because, for example, like we are already there that the language models can write unit tests, they can write integration tests. So this is something that can scale actually the security process right now. The other part, which still is very strong, is of course creating static analysis, good static analyzers. So of course, tools such as Slitter, or we have our Wake framework, can be kind of like solution to at least partially scale the security process. And on this topic, maybe one news that we would like to share with, we have just today announced that we have a detector which is made for 4337. And if anyone would like to have their project scanned, just reach us. It's kind of like a solution of validating usage of incorrect optcodes or storage, and these kind of like pieces can be automated, but the big picture, I'm afraid, is still on the auditors and manual code review.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm going to wrap it up with summarizing this. Also, I think that security, especially going forward now with 7702, super excited about it because 7702 brings this modularity that many, until now it was very exclusive to smart contract accounts, brings this also into the UA space that brings a lot of power, but it's also, I'm going to quote Uncle Ben here, right? Like with a lot of power comes a lot of responsibility, which these security considerations we have here. So I think really it's increasing the space where we have to pay close attention to security, and really exciting to see how this comes together, security, flexibility, and to enhance our UX for all of the Ethereum users.